Judge. No matter what you do in life or what industry you're in, there'll always be a group of cool kids. And every person, every brand wants to be at the table with the cool kids. So a few years ago, I was at my favorite marketing conference and I was invited out to dinner. That night, I found myself sitting with all the marketing industry keynote speakers and all the authors that I admired. It was at that moment that I realized I was at the cool kids table. From one of those people, I've literally taken notes on his speaking style and the way he educates while providing entertaining thought leadership on marketing and business. And I'm honored to have him as a guest today. He's a best selling author and internationally acclaimed keynote speaker. Before building and selling a thriving digital marketing agency, he produced for NBC's Today Show and worked for the Muppets in New York. He uses his magnetic speaking style while teaching leaders how to grow their businesses. And as a mainstay on global marketing influencer list, he has crafted documentary films and award-winning content for startups to Fortune 500 brands. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Andrew Davis.
Hey, man, thank you so much for inviting me to the cool kids table.
Definitely, man. You made the cool kids table cool, man.
Not me. There are lots of people before me. It's so nice to be at the same table with you, though.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Good to meet you and to have a chance to have a conversation with you today. And bask in some of that energy that you have when you're speaking.
Thanks, man. You too. I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
So Andrew, now the audience listening to this podcast ranges from senior marketing execs to those looking to start a marketing career. And most of us, myself included for sure, didn't start on a path to be known as a marketer. So you've got an interesting backstory. Can you give us a brief map of how you reached this point in your career?
Oh yeah. The short map is basically I wanted to be in television, so I started my career in the television business. I know you were a DJ. I didn't think I'd be a marketer, so I went to school for television and film. My first job out of college was working at a local television station. I produced two programs every week. One was a medical call-in show. It was like basically hypochondriacs calling in for an hour, and they got to talk to a doctor live on the air. But like the FCC prohibits you from giving medical advice on the air. So it was basically you could only talk around the problem and then just say, go see a doctor. That was the whole show. It was a terrible show. But it was the highest rated medical show on television at the time, because it was the only medical show on the air at the time. And I produced another show called Adler Online, which was a late night call-in talk show. And it was basically just a right-wing Republican host in a very Democratic blue state. And, people would call in and yell at him. And I'd just pick the least drunk person to put on the air. That was my job. But it was great. It was a great experience. And then from there, I went on to, I produced segments for the Today Show. I worked for Charles Kuralt. I wrote some stuff for his last show called An American Moment. And also my stories appeared in his book called An American Moment. So I learned a lot about storytelling and television. And then I got a job, my dream job, at the Jim Henson Company, working for the Muppets. And that's actually the pivot point. That's where I learned everything I ever needed to know about marketing, because the Jim Henson Company is able to create content that inspires you to buy stuff you didn't know you needed. So no one needs a Grover plush doll or a Big Bird pillowcase or a sleeping bag with Dora the Explorer. Like all this kids show stuff is what the Jim Henson Company is really good at selling, and that's where they make their money. They make great content that inspires people to buy stuff, and it was there that I realized, wow, if you can create great content that inspires people to buy things, you could really change the world. And I after the Jim Henson Company, which by the way, as a side note, wasn't the best job ever. The best thing that come out of the Jim Henson Company was I met my wife there, so that was the highlight. And then I went on to work at some startups in marketing, and I started my own agency with a journalist friend of mine. So neither of us knew anything about running an agency or marketing. We grew that business until 2012 when I moved on, sold the business, and then since then I've just been writing books and speaking about marketing and thinking about marketing a lot. So that's my trajectory into the marketing world. It wasn't so short. Sorry, Lee. I could have.
No, that's great, because there's so many questions come out of that. So for one, let's get the agency first. So with the agency, coming from where you came up into that point, was it more about marketing, or was it about what you had just learned about how content was able to sell things? I mean, how did that play
It
together?
was that was essentially the kind of like I mean, we were very naive young guys. We thought, look, we wanted to create documentary films. So Jim and I were like, we're going to create documentary films, but we were like, how are we going to find the money to do this? And we thought, well, we'll take on some clients and we'll tell stories that help them sell stuff. And that was kind of the evil, corporate empire was going to help us fund these great documentaries that would change the world for the same reason, which is content can inspire people to do things they didn't know they needed to do or wanted to do. And it turned out that we were so good at and built such a business, for companies to inspire change that we realized we didn't have time to create documentary films anymore. So the principle was the same. Our first client was actually a financial investment company called Putnam Investments. And, from there, we did all sorts of stuff for all sorts of brands, selling everything from computer equipment. One of our clients was Dell, down to small startups, a company called VBrick. And, it was the whole principle was if you can create content that inspires people to take action, to do something different, then you can sell them anything you want, at any time. And that's essentially been the principle that I learned in television and I still believe in today.
So was there ever a struggle, and this is not just for the agency, but for what you see any business do, was there ever a struggle to create interesting, engaging entertainment things from brands and products that you knew were boring?
No, no,
Never a
I
challenge?
never. It's never been a challenge. I think because I think there's a formula, Lee. Like I think television. What I learned in television is that there are no new ideas, right? Like you don't have to be some creative genius to make it, in television. All you need to do is understand what people like, and then you have to be able to break that down into some core components, and then you basically have to twist that idea to fit the audience. So as long as you understand what the audience is already consuming and what they like, all you need to do is take a hook, which is I learned in the television business. A hook is just a simple twist on a familiar theme, and you just extract that from the stuff they like. So, like, let's say it's an engineering audience that loves MythBusters. Okay, like that, great. That I know they love MythBusters already. I'm just going to take that idea, which is we're going to test some of the biggest myths in the industry, and I'm going to apply it to this boring concept. I don't know. Let's say your client just sells shelving units for industrial warehouses. Okay, well, we're going to test myths about industrial strength, shelving. And with two funny guys, and we're going to do it in a scientific way. And all of a sudden, you've got a creative idea. So for me, it's really and actually Carla Johnson is the genius behind this. She's actually done a good job in her latest book about helping people understand that creativity is just about connecting dots that don't seem to go together and making them work. And all of a sudden, you look like you're creative. So yes, it's I never have a shortage of ideas. My wife can tell you that. Like I woke up this morning and said I'm going to make a music video, and she's like, "Well, okay."
That's just Tuesday. Nothing
That's just
different, right?
Tuesday. Exactly. Yeah, I want to make I've had this in my back pocket for a long time, but I want to make a music video called "Talk Data to Me." It's Jason Derulo. It's like a CMO who's like, just talk data to me. Don't give me I don't want to hear any pitches without some data, that kind of thing.
As long as you have some ad libs that says Andrew Davis in the
Yeah,
background,
exactly.
the way he does it.
That's exactly what I'm picturing.
You got to tag it with your name all over the
That's
song like
right.
Jason Derulo
Yeah,
does.
every time. That's it. It's good brand building.
Definitely. You know who wrote and produced the song because he will tell you.
He will tell you every time. There's no doubt.
That is personal
Jason
branding
Derulo,
right
and maybe 2 Chainz. It's like that's it.
Whoever did it, they got to tell wait for the verse
That's
comes
right.
in. 2 Chainz, okay.
That's right.
So you mentioned, when I ask about making content for boring brands or products, this is a question that I'm sure we all hear a lot because marketers tend to, especially those who are sitting next to somebody who is marketing for a cool jacket or clothing company, and they're working in industrial manufacturing. They're like, I can't do what they're doing because we make screwdrivers and drills. They make cool tennis shoes. So
Yeah.
what I heard and what you said a moment ago is it's more about the person who consumes the content, who consumes the product, than it is the product. Right?
Absolutely. If you can like one of the best things you can do is just find out what other content your audience likes to consume. So what magazines do they read? Maybe it's not a print magazine anymore. That's okay. What websites do they visit frequently for information having nothing to do with your product or service, or maybe even their business? If you find out that, all those industrial manufacturers like to surf on weekends and they all read surfing magazines and they all like this surfer or they like this surfing content on YouTube, well, then start there. Find out what they're doing, what's their hook, and how can you apply what you've learned in the content they're creating to then parallel it to you. I'm not saying create surfing content, although you could. I'm saying what do you like and see in that surfing content, in the core ingredients, like the meta level ingredients that you could apply to your content to all of a sudden make it seem creative and different.
Yeah. I had a random conversation similar to that one a few weeks ago where we were talking about, what are these people like and how do you market to these people rather than about the product. And I was like, well, if let's say you're selling kids shoes, do some content about playgrounds. They're like, we can't
Exactly.
sell kids shoes like that. So, well, guess who cares about safe playgrounds? Like
Exactly.
moms. Who buys shoes? Moms. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the more you understand about the content they consume, the better off you're going to be in finding opportunities for creativity. Because you're right, like it feels very limiting when you're like, well, we sell UV light curing glue, and that's all we sell, and that's our little universe. You're not going to find much creative inspiration there. So just like a television show, like the way a television network works is they basically put a call out and they say like 9 p.m.s on Fridays is open right now for the next season. We don't have anything to put on there. And here's the deal. The show before it brings in this kind of audience and the show after it brings in this kind of audience. And we need something that bridges the gap. So when you're pitching TV shows, you start with the audience. And this audience is coming in. So you're like, well, what can we create that audience is going to like? And what can we create that this audience is going to like? And you start looking at what they're consuming. And then you say, all right, what kind of show are we going to put in the middle? That's why you get so many spinoffs, because they're like, well, NCIS is a great show. What are we going to put right after it? Well, I don't know. NCIS New Orleans. Good idea. That's an easy win because they're going to roll right through it, right? Like they know it's a simple twist. We're going to just move NCIS from, DC or New York to New Orleans, then we'll move it to LA, and we've got 3 hit shows, and that's it. So don't overthink the creative aspect of it. Just keep it simple.
Definitely. So let's switch gears a bit here. There was when I first heard you speak, it was at I think it was at an event where I won't get into. I'm going to mention the actual speaking topic you had later on, but I'll tell you why you caught my attention. So up until that point, I had spent 8 years working for a customer experience SaaS company, and they made software for customer experience. So when I first heard you speaking at this event, and you were crossing marketing with customer experience, you naturally had my full attention. So, because those are two
Yeah.
things that just, it was customer service software. It just never really crossed past my mind until I heard you speak on it. So, let's talk about marketing's role in the customer experience. How did
Yeah.
you how did you bring those two things together?
For me, it's really easy. Like the way I define a customer experience is a series of encounters that leave an impression. So like over the entire experience a customer or prospect or client has with you, what emojis would you attach to each one of those interactions or encounters? That's what the experience looks like. So just imagine if it's a new customer that signed on today and you send them a welcome letter or a welcome package, or you greet them when they come into the store, what emoji are you attaching to that? For example, we just had our air conditioning break a few weeks ago. And when I called the customer support line for our air conditioning company that services it, this is how they answer the phone, Lee. They answer the phone with, "How can I help you smile today?"
With no smile.
No smile. You cannot hear the smile, right? So like they're saying the right thing, but the emoji I attach to that would be like a frowny face, annoyed emoji. Like you
Yeah.
obviously don't want to try to make me smile, right? So if you think of every one of those encounters as the customer experience, that is your brand. That is what the brand is. That's all of those emojis averaged out and put on the top as a emoji average. That would be the brand perception you have in the marketplace. So for me, marketing has to be involved in the customer experience, and marketing is a giant part of the customer experience if you consider marketing to have anything to do with brand building.
So, if you're an executive, would you hold marketing accountable for a portion of the customer experience to make sure they have the
Uh,
right emoji, as you said?
Yeah, I would, yes, yeah, 100%. I would say that every department should be responsible for a piece of the customer experience. That means accounting, right? Like maybe you don't think of accounting as having something to do with it, especially in the B2B world. You're like, well, they don't really deliver on the. No, they do. Imagine what if you provide a service and your accounting department is the one that sends out the invoices. Every time you get an invoice as a client, what emoji do you attach to that invoice? It's usually like it could be a oh no, or it might be a oh my gosh, I can't believe we went over on this month's allotted hours. Like, I got to call them and find out. Or maybe you think, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. I wonder if I can find a cheaper service provider. Those are the emojis. That's part of the
Mm.
experience. And if your accounting team isn't thinking with your marketing team and your customer experience team and your CEO about what impression you're leaving every time you send an invoice out, you're actually creating a new moment where they may go on a journey to find another provider for that service. So we have to be really conscientious of the fact that it's a series of encounters, and every little micro encounter can have a big impact on your experience and your churn rate and your customer satisfaction and your overall return on investment for marketing and for your actual investment in product. So I don't think there's any department that shouldn't be responsible for ensuring that they're leaving the right kind of impression with every interaction with their customer.
Now, this might seem a bit redundant, but I wanted to also know your thoughts on the flip side of that. You know, what part of marketing is the customer experience, or not the experience, but the people who are responsible for customer experience? What is their role in making sure that marketing happens well?
Yeah, I think the customer experience team or the customer success team or the customer service team, whatever they call it in your
Hmm.
organization, I think they're the most valuable asset you have. Michael Brenner has this great. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Lee, but he has this great thing he calls the bullseye org chart. Have you
Hmm.
seen it before?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. So his bullseye org chart is this idea that the people closest to the customer can add the most value to the organization. And generally, that's not your CEO, right? Your CEO is on the outer rings. If you picture it as a bullseye, your CEO, yeah, they have purvey over a lot of stuff, but they're way outside and far away from the customer who's at the center of that bullseye. Your biggest asset are the people close to the center of the bullseye. So that's your customer service team. And if marketing isn't relying on your customer service team to better understand where the emojis are sour, where the biggest emojis are mind blown emojis happen, right? You're not doing a good job from a marketing perspective, understanding what to market to the clients that you haven't got yet. So my belief is that if you truly understand how you add value on the customer experience side, meaning after somebody's purchased something, you don't know what you're selling to the people who haven't signed up yet. And Rackspace actually in the early 2000s is a great example of this because they also didn't know what they were selling. Rackspace is a big web hosting company,
Yeah.
and they
Hmm.
didn't know what they were selling. They were selling feeds and speeds. We have faster, best hosting services. We have 99.9% uptime. Everybody was selling that. It wasn't until they realized that their customers loved their amazing support. The customer
Mm.
experience from Rackspace was better than anyone else's. So that's when they said, well, let's listen to our customer service team. They love our customer service team, and let's market it as fanatical support. That's marketing, listening to what's working in the customer experience and selling that instead of selling the feeds and speeds and features and benefits. So sell the experience. People will pay 25% more just for a good experience. That says it all to me.
That's interesting because, typically marketing is thinking about, well, we're going to market our product, market our service, market our brand. But what you just explained was the actual functions of the company is worthy of being marketed. Like the actual
Absolutely.
customer experience is worth being marketed. That's
I mean,
another level.
Lee, the rest to me, Lee, the rest of it is a commodity. Like I can't think of
Hmm.
anything that anyone sells that can't be negotiated or decided as like, hey, I can get that elsewhere, right? For
Yeah.
about the same price. But the thing you can't get elsewhere is an experience provided by that company and those people. And I
Yeah.
go to so many organizations that say, I say, what differentiates you? What differentiates you? And the more you like drill down and say, well, no, that's a commodity. I can get siding from that guy. Okay, well, what different? The people will say, oh, well, it's my people. Okay, if it's your people, why are your people making a difference? Are they creating a better experience? They better be, because if you're saying it's the people, I want to see that experience being different. So yeah, I think we have a lot of work to do on this front, but I truly believe that the experience is the difference.
Yeah, I think that work that we have to do was evident towards the beginning of the pandemic because there was so much marketing that all of a sudden wanted to showcase frontline workers. I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
where were you showcasing them last year? You
So
know,
true.
you know, instead
Yeah.
of like at moments or times like these, what about last year when they were important? I worked for a company that one of my first corporate marketing jobs, the company, it doesn't exist anymore, probably because of these things.
Let's just
But
say yes, it's because of these exact
yeah, it's because
things.
of these exact things, probably so. So as you said, their customer service, it was a waste management company. And it came down to the smallest things like, did the garbage guy or recycling guy put the bin back in the exact same burn spot on the grass as it was yesterday? Did he put it right back there? Because me in the marketing position, I could do all the brochures and tell
Of
about it and the
course.
website and everything. But if their experience was ruined, I can't market how good of a service we have when they have firsthand experience. The service isn't that great. So
That's so true.
it's a
Yeah, and
two
like
way street.
I love your example too, because that's what I'm talking about, Lee. In every one of the organizations I looked at, it ends up being small little things. Like I call them micro moments, but it's the micro moments that have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And if you can market yourself as saying, "Hey, look, we care so much that we put our trash cans back on the same burn mark in your yard or your
Yeah.
lawn or your organ," like that shows instead of tells that you have an attention to detail or you care about your customers or you have you're laser focused on providing great service. Instead, we hear people marketing people just using the same language. Like I call it corporate twinning. Like if
Mm.
you look at 10 waste management websites, just to use your example, they all will say the same thing. We're diligent, we set a schedule, you can
Care
trust
about the
us,
environment.
we care about the environment, we have a great recycling exactly, right? You know all the things they say,
Hmm.
but they don't show you how they do that. When you show someone like, hey, we care about the environment and we do this, or instead you invert it entirely and you don't have to say we care about the environment. You say every week we do this, and here's a picture of it. That's when people are like, wow, these people are different.
Yeah, they're sincere about what they're saying they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, show me
So,
instead of tell me is always my motto, which I learned
well,
in television. We'll just bring it back to TV.
exactly. Well, speaking of show and tell, Drew, let's talk about the content that you create. Now,
Oh, no.
it's trouble. Okay, so it's full of value, and I advise any business person to follow your YouTube channel. In fact, before we go too far, I want to go ahead and give your website address. We're not wrapping up, but I want to give your website
Thanks.
address. It's akadrewdavis.com, right?
That's it. That's it.
akadrewdavis.com. So, while you're a speaker, you're an author, I also have to include you as a content creator. So with an
Thanks.
incredible person, yeah, and one with an incredible personal brand. So beyond providing tons of valuable marketing education, tell us your philosophy on creating content and how you use the content that you create.
So, okay, my philosophy on creating content is pretty simple. I mean, like, and I feel bad saying this because actually, while we're recording this, I've missed 3 weeks. So, like, number one is consistency. So I've missed 3 weeks, and I probably shouldn't be promoting that. But I was on vacation for one of those, so I feel like
You
that gives
deserve
me
a
something.
vacation.
Anyway, consistency is number one. Like, you've got to actually deliver reliably to your audience. A piece of content that adds value to their lives. So consistency is pretty simple. And it's got to be frequent enough, meaning like I send mine out every Thursday. So Thursday, I've made an appointment with my audience and I try to keep that appointment every single week. And that's my goal, to send that content out. The second one is, you need a hook, like a simple twist on a familiar theme. And so for me, my whole career has been inspired by children's television and television personalities. So I don't know do you know Beekman's World, Lee? Do you
I,
remember that
I
show?
don't. I
You might
don't
be
think
too
so.
young. Yeah, Beekman's World was like a science show for
Oh, Beekman's
kids.
World. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, you know Beekman's World? Okay,
yeah.
Beekman's World. So Beekman's World
I'm
like
glad you said I'm too
inspired
young,
me.
by the way. I appreciate that.
So Beekman's World is awesome. If you've never seen it, go watch a clip. But Beekman's World is kind of it's like a science show for kids done in a real zany way. So if you picture, my hook is basically Beekman's World meets Alton Brown for marketing. That's how I think of it. And so I try to explain and give examples of, great revenue generating ideas from other companies, but told in a way that feels more like Beekman's World and Alton Brown would if he was doing a marketing show. So that's kind of the second thing. You need a hook. And the third thing for me is that you got to make sure that you actually are creating content from a person to a person. Now, for me, that's easy because my business is me, right? Like there's nothing else behind it. But I think a lot of corporations miss that opportunity. They forget to attach talent to the content they're creating. And actually, I like to boat, Lee, and so there's an app called Docwa, and it helps you book docks for your boat. You can book it anywhere. That's not important. What is important is that they send out a newsletter once a week, and it comes from this woman named Becky at Docwa, and that's what it says in the from line. Now, I don't know who Becky is. I've never met Becky, but I can tell you that at their trade show booths every year at boat shows around the country, the number one question they get is Becky here at the booth? I want to meet her. They've built a relationship with Becky because she's the one that writes the newsletter, and everybody wants to know who Becky is. So that's what I mean. You build a relationship with these people when you're creating content like that, and it has to be person to person, not brand to person. That just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about brand, I think it gets better and better the more real the person is, the more personality it is. And you have the freedom that, you are your brand, you are your company, so you can go as far as you feel comfortable going. But people working within a company, they may have amazing ideas, but because they can't be too much of themselves because they represent the company, what would you say to a person who is definitely in a conservative company, but they're also tasked with do something original and different?
Yeah, well, I would just tell them to remember always that good marketing is risky marketing.
Love it.
Like, I
Good
get
marketing
it.
is risky marketing.
Good marketing is risky marketing. Like if you find yourself stuck in an organization where they're constantly saying, we can't do that, we're in a conservative industry, whatever it is, we sell financial services or pharmaceuticals, or we sell to boring B2B marketers, just keep telling the people that you work with that good marketing is risky marketing. And if we keep doing the same thing as everybody else, because that's the way the industry is, we're never going to stand out. So you've got to be willing to take some risks. And if you're the talent, if you have the opportunity to be the Becky at Docwa for industrial shelving, go do it. Like build yourself a little personality into your newsletter. And if they let you go for that, don't worry. I guarantee someone will hire you because you were the Becky at Docwa.
Absolutely. I mentioned that in the B content keynote because, you could either be Becky, the line item that's safe and nobody, that can get hacked easily because she's just a line item. Or you can be Becky that your company knows can go anywhere else and be Becky and take their business with them.
Exactly. All your CEO has to do is be at that trade show booth one day, 1 hour to hear how many people are like, hey, is Becky here? Can I meet Becky? Is Becky behind the booth? And they'll be like, wow, are we paying Becky enough? Because that's where all their traffic is coming from. So just be the Becky. That's our new hashtag for the day. Be the Becky.
Well, I don't know, that has a lot of meaning, so I don't know about that one.
Does it? Oh no. I don't. Is that inappropriate?
Hopefully
Am I
our
saying
audience
something
doesn't
the kids
know.
are gonna?
Maybe our audience doesn't know, which is fine. I'll just, they
You'll
say
have
when
to
you
tell me off the air.
when you
Liz,
stumble, you
Google
walk
that
forward
real quick.
Yeah, well, they say when you stumble, walk forward quickly. So I'm going to walk forward quickly.
Okay, good. Do that. Sheepers.
So Drew, let's talk about your personal brand. What was it intentional?
Is my personal brand intentional? I mean, it's a series of decisions that I think each decision is intentional. How's that? So like, like when it comes to my speaking, I always wanted to like blow people's minds, but have fun on stage. I wanted people to smile. So that was like an intentional brand decision. I wanted to, I usually wear a bow tie. So if you guys are watching the video version of this, I don't have it on. I'm on casual day today. The bow tie was intentional, but as a kid, I used to wear a tie every day from middle school, from 8th grade all the way through high school, every single day. In fact, on my letter jacket from swimming, it said tie guy. That's what everybody called me in high school.
So it's you. It's truly authentically you.
Yeah, it's just me. And it was an intentional decision when I was, in 8th grade. I wanted to stand out and be different. And I realized that, looking like Alex P. Keaton might do it. So I carried a briefcase and wore a tie. And then everybody knew who I was, the guy with the briefcase and the tie. So, I think I think every one of the decisions I've made has been borrowing from the best in the business as I saw it. So it was borrowing from Alton Brown or Beekman or Bill Nye the Science Guy. It was, or James Bond. I'm a big James Bond fan. So a lot of little decisions have been intentionally, set, and I've consistently tried to deliver on them so that I'm constantly building the brand and moving forward.
I know that it must, and I've experienced this. I don't know if you've ever experienced it. So when I was a DJ, DJs live off their personal brand. I mean, that's where, before I knew the phrase personal brand, that's where I learned personal brand, because
Yeah.
you live day by day by who knows you, how consistent your brand is. You need to have an image to think of. And so my personal brand at the time had two things that were consistent. I always had a hat on, typically
Yeah.
backwards, and I always had aviator glasses, mirrored aviator glasses.
Oh.
And I was consistent. And then I met my wife, and she was doing PR, and she became my PR agent. This is when, before she was my wife.
Yeah.
And it would come to a point where I want to go out somewhere and, man, you know what? I don't want to wear these glasses. It's going to be too dark. She's like, you can't. What do you mean? She's like, that's your brand. You cannot be seen. And it got to the point where, if I did go out, people would go, oh, I didn't recognize you without the hat and the glasses. And I
That,
was like, really? The brand is that
that
strong?
That's exactly what happens to me. I used to, when I lived in Boston, I used to go to the same coffee shop every morning to get coffee. I knew the owner from a previous job, and the everybody in the coffee shop used to know me, and they would say hi when I walked in. Well, if I had my contacts on and it was a Saturday, I would walk in and they would greet me like they didn't know who I was, and I didn't put it to. I'm like, hey, Ashley, or whatever, and they'd say, hi, sir, how can I help you? And I'm like, I just want the same thing I get every day. And they would say, well, I'm sorry, I don't remember you. And I'm like, it's Andrew, like with the orange glasses. And they go, oh my gosh, I didn't. Yeah. So the same thing happens to me. I mean, I think there's a point, people like Ann Hanley, Scott Monty, who wears bow ties as well. There's a point at which you realize you've built a strong enough brand that people are drawing it and sending it to you. And it's just glasses, some funky hair and a bow tie. And you're like, well, I guess that says it all,
Yeah,
But I don't know if you've thought of this before, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, Lee. But it's kind of a catch-22,
it
because
is.
if you want to make a change and do something different, you find yourself wondering, am I going to destroy the brand I've built by doing something where I don't wear the bow tie? I'm going to start showing up in shorts and Hawaiian shirts. Is that going to be weird? I have a friend of mine was the CEO of Rackspace and the founder of Rackspace, which is why I mentioned it earlier, I guess. But he wore Hawaiian shirts, and it started as an accident, and he's become known. He always has to wear a Hawaiian shirt, otherwise people are disappointed when he shows up at an event wearing a tux or something. They're like, "Where's your Hawaiian shirt?" So it's a catch-22. I think it's
Yeah.
you've got to be able to evolve your brand and be confident enough, I think, to do that, and I think that goes for anybody.
Yeah, and I think it also evolves. I mean, it also includes any kind of brand, not just a personal brand, but a company brand.
Absolutely.
And I guess with the personal brand, depending on where you're at in your career, it could be less risky than, say, if you're McDonald's and decide you want to have a
Oh yeah,
golden
exactly.
golden MC with a big D instead of a Mickey D's. It just doesn't work. The golden arches are where they are. But yeah, I
Yeah.
can definitely relate to. I mean, because even with you, having my background, having built a personal brand, and then also now more recently coach people on personal brands, I when I first saw you, I was okay. He's a content marketing bro. He's got these orange glasses on, and the bow tie I think was orange at the time too. I'm like, let's see how long this guy can carry this on. Will he always have on orange glasses, which you do right now?
I do.
I'm
Fair
like,
point.
does he have a different? How many pairs
I
do you
almost didn't
have?
wear them. I almost
Really?
didn't wear them, Lee. And my wife was like, "You got to put on your glasses." So your wife and my wife should just hang out.
Definitely. They know how. We have a whole new genre. It's called husband branding.
Yes, exactly.
Got to keep
It's
the
a
money
show where
flowing,
only
right?
two people show up every time.
Exactly. Exactly. So, Drew, before we wrap up, I want to tell listeners, about one of your keynotes that I found very impactful. It's called the curiosity factor. So, without satisfying their curiosity, tell us about that keynote and how it's been received.
Yeah, sure. The curiosity factor is one of my favorite presentations I've ever put together. But it basically, I got frustrated that every piece of content I seemed to read at the time was telling me how long things needed to be. Like, if you want people to read your blog post, it can't be over 800 words. If you're going to, create a video, it can't be longer than 2 minutes and 34 seconds because that's the average length of the most popular videos on YouTube. And so it really annoyed me. So I spent about a year trying to figure out why people can say your video only needs to be short and people will only have time to consume short, snackable content. But those same people will binge watch Stranger Things for 2 days on a weekend. And I thought there must be a reason Stranger Things can hold people's attention better than our newsletters, right? Or our podcasts or our shows. So, I spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure out what the formula was. And the curiosity factor is basically, what I found is that there's a very simple formula to earning people's attention. And it's very simple. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't want to give it away, the whole thing, but it's a lot of fun. And the formula is just attention equals interest over time multiplied by a payoff. And it's really, really simple. You just got to create curiosity gaps in the mind of your audience and keep them chasing an answer. So actually, you did it really well in this podcast, Lee. I don't know if it was intentional, but I think it's just because you're a good content creator. But you said 3 times, I'm going to tell you about the one of Drew's speeches in a minute. We're going to get to it in a minute. I won't tell you now, but I'm going to get to it. Those are curiosity gaps, and it's what keeps people engaged. Even subconsciously, they're chasing an answer, and that's how you earn their attention. So props to a great content creator like you for doing it.
Well, you don't encounter people like you enough where it doesn't rub off on you. I mean, there's definitely, I said early on that I take notes. So some of those were mental notes. That was probably one of them. So, and to this day, I never see a goldfish in a bowl and don't think about something you said.
There you go. That's a curiosity gap.
That's a curiosity gap to see how much I almost want to stop and just stare him down and see how long his attention span is.
I love it.
But you know awesome. What? It never works because I give up and lose attention myself.
Yeah. See? See, goldfish do have a long attention span. That's the lesson. That's the whole lesson of that speech.
Yeah, that's the lesson. And the goldfish wins against me every time.
Every time.
So, Drew, tell us how we can find you and possibly connect with you.
Sure. Well, you can find me on YouTube if you just search Loyalty Loop and Andrew Davis. You can find me there. That's where I put up my Loyalty Loop videos. You can find me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. Or you can find me at akadrewdavis.com. There's my speaking information. Or you can sign up for Loyalty Loop there, and I'll send it to you in your inbox every Thursday, a day before everybody else in the world. We'll make an appointment together and have some fun. And I'll have a video this week for you. That's absolutely my promise. Well,
you're entertaining, educating, and consistent. So I appreciate you, Drew.
Thanks, man. Thanks
for joining.
You too.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com. To continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform.